The Japanese Pantheon is the latest addition to Age of Mythology Retold, and just like the other Pantheons before it, it's quite unique. Let's have a look at the civilization as a whole, starting with their economy. The basic eco unit is the commoner. In terms of gather rates and what the commoner can do, it's identical to the Greek villager, being able to construct buildings, gather food, wood, and gold at a decent rate when comparing to the other Pantheon villagers. Unlike Greek villagers though, commoners cannot gather favour. Japanese have two resource drop-off buildings, this being the water mill for food and wood, and the mining camp for gold only, and the respective upgrades in these buildings. This unique sharing of food and wood does allow you to do some cute micro with huntable animals near a wood line if you choose to do that. The other eco unit for the Japanese is the Miko. This unit is also trained from the town centre and is your favour gatherer. Mikos gather favour by building a shrine. The amount of favour the shrine gathers is boosted when it's placed next to natural resources. From my limited playtesting, I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but it seems like the more resources around, the better. And it generally ranges from a weak Egyptian monument like the monument to the villagers at 0.06 to about 0.09, which is the equivalent of a monument to the priests. The Miko can also be an extra early scout if you don't really need the favour early on. And she can also heal damaged units and pick up relics after grabbing the Sacred Custodian's tech from the shrine. Moving on to the Scout, their unique Scout is a fox myth unit called the Kitsune. I really like the look of this little guy, how he runs along, and the noises he makes as well. It's a relatively fast scout with decent line of sight, and as it's a myth unit, it cannot pick up relics like some of the other Pantheon scouts, but more can be trained from the temple. You don't just get the first one, like the Greek Kataskopos. The Kitsune does have a passive ability to speed up units around it, perfect addition to add to raiding parties, or even a slow ball of units just to speed them up a little bit. Moving on to the military side of things, let's start with the classical age units and buildings. The guardhouse can be considered the equivalent of an archery range, housing two archer units. The Yumi Archer is a basic archer unit similar to a Toxote or an Arcus, with 18 range and a very small multiplier versus infantry. The Yumi Archer does have a slow rate of fire compared to the others in Age of Mythology though, even longer than a Terma spear throw. This does make archer kiting less practical, or at least a bit different for your muscle memory to get a hold of. Archer number 2 is the Bushi. This hero archer also has 18 range, but only bonus damage versus myth units, and a slightly faster attack speed, although slower than most in the game. The Bushi is only 20 resources more expensive than the non-hero archer, and trains a little bit slower. The third unit from the guardhouse is the Yari Spearman, which might seem a bit weird for the archery range, but it will make sense when we look at the next building. These guys are an anti-cavalry cheap unit. Although they're called a spearman, they have a 3 times multiplier versus cavalry, so probably closer to a Norse herdman or an Atlantean catapultes rather than the Egyptian spearman, which tends to have more base attack and less bonus damage. The second building is the dojo. This infantry building trains the premium units, which is why the spearman was in the last building. In the classical age, you can build 2 units, the samurai and the onimusha. All units from this building are extremely expensive in terms of resource cost and population cost, and they all have a special ability where they do more damage at the start of each fight. The samurai is the base premium infantry unit. It has absolutely crazy stats and a 1.5 multiplier versus other infantry. But bear in mind, this unit does cost 180 resources and takes 4 population. So it's essentially 2 hoplites or 2 Mamillos. Similar to the guardhouse units, stats-wise, the Onimusha is basically a hero version of the samurai, no bonus damage versus infantry, but a big anti-myth unit bonus. The stable is the third and final military building for the classical age and can produce 1 unit in this age, the Naginata Rider. I'd compare this guy to the Norse raiding cavalry, fast cavalry unit with decent pierce armor and a small anti-archer bonus. This unit does allow the Japanese to be an early game raiding threat, especially when paired with the Kitsune speed, which brings their speed up by 0.3. Again, we do see the similarity to the Greeks, where they have 3 different buildings in the classical age to choose from. Advancing to the heroic age unlocks a few more units. From the dojo, you get the shinobi. Probably the most unique infantry unit from the Japanese. It's good against ranged units and buildings. The stats themselves do show this. Basically, no hack armor at all, and crazy pierce armor and a big anti-archer multiplier. In terms of other units in AOM, this unit probably sits closest to the Huskar, in stats, but much squishier at 110 HP. The big difference maker for the Shinobis though, and I think what's going to make them very strong, is their ability. As well as dealing more damage like the other dojo units, it gives them a big speed boost for a short period of time. From a respectable 5 normally to a whopping 7 speed, which is faster than basically any cavalry unit in the game. This allows them to dive a backline of archers or even catch up to chariot archers and termers, which they will heavily counter. I think a mass of these will be absolutely devastating to a player that just isn't expecting it. The stable also gives you 2 more units in the heroic age. As with the hero units from the other buildings, you now gain access to a hero cavalry unit. This one's quite different to the Naginata Rider though. It isn't just a hero version. It's slower, tankier, and it has a slower rate of fire as well. And a nice addition is it has 1 range, which might not seem like a lot, but in a large fight, that can be a real difference maker. We see this with the Sarissa Hoplites having extra range, and just how many times that's been nerfed. The other unit from the stable is actually a horse archer. It has Terma-ish stats, but with the big difference from the Terma being the attack speed. I imagine this unit being much more of a nuisance with the shoot and scoop micro and kiting away from units than the Terma is, but we'll have to see how that one works out. Heroic Age, of course, unlocks your castle type building, and in this case, it is the castle. The Heroic Age siege option is the Oyumi, a ranged siege quite similar to the Chinese ranged siege which they get from the Third Age as well. Advancing to the Mythic Age brings 1 more unit, but this guy is my favorite out of all the new Japanese units, the Onmyoji. This is a siege and hero unit. Basically nothing exists like this in any other Pantheon. He's a healer with both crush damage and divine damage. So he'll be good at taking out buildings and the occasional myth unit if you need him to deal with that one. The drawback is he's extremely squishy and doesn't outrange buildings like some other siege weapons do. So if there's only one of them taking out a town center with some towers around, it won't last very long. And lastly, for the shared units for all the Japanese is of course the Titan. The Titan has a different form from all the other Pantheons with their humanoid Titans. This one is a large and in charge snake with a different ability where it swipes around its tail. It also slithers along, but it's the same speed as the rest of them, just a different attack pattern. And I think last up for the shared units for everybody is the water myth unit. So the first one from the Heroic Age is the Hunningayo. He kind of dives underneath and does a good bit of splash damage. I think this is a very solid unit. And then the OP boy himself is the Umibozo. He can teleport to literally any water that you want, and you see the cooldown, it goes down so quick. If he could teleport to any part of water, I think that would be strong in itself. But then he's also amphibious. He can come on the land. He does a disgusting amount of damage to units. You see he does 80 damage per shot there and 40 crush. It does like 3 seconds to attack, but his AoE seems to do something pretty good there. 2 hands, attacks both the guys and takes them out in a nice swift 4 hits. Not too shabby considering how tanky he is. Now let's take a look at some myth units. Starting with the classical age, we have the Joragumo from Inari Okami. I'm pretty sure this spider lady featured in some of the teaser trailers, and she's pretty good against the human units. She can snare one up inside a spider grasp and then throw them away. So nice bit of CC. The Wan Yudo is also another one that was teased quite early. This is a wheel that breathes fire. I think the test that I've done for it here probably isn't the best, but I bet in a decent sum of units that 2.5 area special is probably pretty good, but it's quite fragile, so needs a bit of frontline, I reckon. Last classical age unit is my favorite, the Weasel, the Kama Itachi from Amine Uzume. This guy has some good area damage and does a bit of slicing and dicing with his razor sharp claws on his paws, and he's just a nice lad. Going in with the heroic ones, we have Raiju from Raijin, and I think this unit is extremely strong. So it has a bit of CC on the lightning bolt there, and then even when it's just doing its normal ability, it's very strong, has a decent amount of HP too and survivability, and not the slowest unit either. I think it's got a bit of everything. If you can get some kind of heroic age timing off with a few of these, it could be pretty devastating. Hachiman's myth unit is the Tengu. He's a flying unit that doesn't stay flying, just kind of jumps in. The jump doesn't seem to do any damage, which is a bit strange compared to some of the other units. But after it lands, it does extra damage from where it lands. So potentially this could be pretty good. Maybe the jump does the tiniest bit of damage, but not really much. Last heroic age one is the Oni. This is from Fujin, and more of a siege weapon really, but does do some decent damage to units if you need it to. has an ability where it deals more damage, but also takes more damage. It goes berserk. So you can toggle this on and off if you just want it to be this tanky frontline instead of the damage dealer. The Mythic Age options, of course, are extremely strong. The Azura from Taki Mikazuki is very strong. Kind of breathes fire automatically on certain units, and then also has an ability to target something and slam his hand down. 1000 HP, extremely tanky, area damage too. He's pretty good. And this is one that a lot of people were looking forward to. This is the Shinigami, the undead for Watasumi. So the Shinigami maybe isn't the strongest up front. It does have that Son of Osiris lightning bolt attack, but it doesn't chain. It's just against the one unit. But 20 pierce, 20 divine damage is pretty good. That 2 AoE doesn't seem to do too much. I just let this one die here because it does have a special ability, and I love the visual effects for it. It zooms its way back to the temple and then respawns as the Revenant Shinigami, which I believe is meant to be stronger. It looks pretty similar though, but again, you get one with an extra life. If that one does die, then that's the end of it. It does have this kind of frosty breath too, which fears them away. So decent CC options out of that one as well. And the last one is Onmaraki, the flying unit. This one seems insanely strong. I know I've said that about a few of them, but it's a flying unit. We all know how strong flying units are, only can be targeted by certain units. Has these little guys, the wretches that get thrown down, which can tank up some good damage. I mean, they don't last forever. They're kind of similar to minions, I guess, from the mummies, but still, so many of them get let out at once. At least the mummies, you need to kill some units off first, and it's not flying. So I expect some, I expect this guy to be OP, to be honest. Before moving on to some of the major god differences, let's talk about Bushido. Bushido is a bonus that the whole Japanese Pantheon gets, with extra benefits given depending on which major god you select. But in general, your Bushido meter increases throughout the game, either passively from units deriving from the dojo, or by generally fighting. You can imagine this as being very similar to how Norse gather favor, where you get the favor passively from the heroes, but also by fighting it goes up much faster. This gives the Japanese user 3 tiers of line upgrades, or if you decide to pick up the line upgrade halfway through to the next tier, you'll get it at a discounted price, depending on how close you are to finishing that tier. The units coming from the dojo also can go beyond champion dojo soldiers. They can actually become elite, which is the next level up from the max Bushido tier. I don't believe this is unlockable when you're in the Mythic Age. You just have to earn the XP from fighting or having your passive units. But it makes those dojo soldiers even stronger. Let's have a look at what the major gods do. Amaterasu is the eco-focused Japanese god. Her Bushido bonus grants an extra gold trickle at each tier, but it starts off from 1 per second right at the start of the game, meaning that in a normal 1v1 skirmish or a team game, you don't even need any villagers on gold in the Archaic Age to be able to build a temple at a decent advance time, which is pretty crazy. Also on the eco side, her shrines increase the content of nearby resources. Basically, if you whack one of these guys down next to your gold mine or starting berries, you can sit in your base for longer, as the resources for those will slowly tick up if they're in the radius of the shrine. As well as eco, Amaterasu benefits infantry, with samurais and onomushas earning extra Bushido XP and allowing them to regenerate HP. Her god power, Solar Shield, temporarily makes a unit invulnerable. This can lead to some really strong early game harass with a samurai or myth unit using this ability. Amaterasu's unique tech is for her Mikos, making them heal faster and reduce their training time. In fact, during this early access phase for creators and top players, Nyan hit me with the Miko healing cheese, where he was throwing 4 Mikos healing 1 unit at me, and it was very frustrating. I don't know if it's good, but he was making it work. Tsukiyomi's focus is on technology, shinobi, and cavalry. Tsukiyomi's greatest asset has to be his god power, New Moon. If you target this on a building, it will research every tech currently available for free, which can lead to a huge power spike or some kind of timing attack. What I've seen early access players do so far is use it on their temple as soon as they get to the classical age. Then you get all of your upgrades for your new myth unit, or using it on your stable to get your early game harass on with extra powerful raids. His Bushido tiers grant cavalry and shinobi attack, as well as gaining extra Bushido from researching technologies. Tsukiyomi also advances the ages 25% faster, which is kind of a hidden eco bonus, letting the town center spend more time on commoners and Mikos. Advancing through each age also gives you a free Kitsune as well. His unique tech gives line of sight and a damage buff to towers and castles for any defensive game enjoys. The third and final Japanese god is Susanoo. He's your favor major god with bonuses on myth units and god powers. His Bushido grants you a lump sum of favor each time you complete the meter, enough to use some god powers again or build lots of myth units. Myth units also earn more Bushido, and his unique upgrade grants them 10% speed and 1 divine damage. He's definitely a fan of the myth units. Invoking god powers makes others 25% cheaper to use, and I absolutely love this power. It might be a bit OP in the right set of hands with certain god powers in a row, but I still think it's great. His unit's special abilities also recharge 25% faster too, which of course works great for all his myth units, but let's not forget about those dojo units with their super strong cooldown ability. And Susanoo's god power is Kusanagi. The closest comparison I have to this is Shockwave, but it just seems like a better version, which is more costly to reuse, if you don't count the bonuses and free favor of course. If there's anything you want me to look at in more depth, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.